Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for I think this is probably our fourth or fifth marketing workshop that we're doing monthly, and we are grateful for everyone participating. So without further ado, I will introduce the star of the show, Marianne Pfeiffer, and we'll take it from there.
Thanks, Lauren. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Marianne Pfeiffer. I'm the principal and founder of 108 Degrees Digital Marketing. I am a MailChimp Pro partner. I do a lot of speaking here, but I've basically been in digital marketing since before there was a thing called digital marketing. So what I try to do is answer questions from clients and from people who are, other marketers who are trying to do the work that I've been doing with my team for many years. And today we're going to try to answer some of those questions. I'm very excited today because we've had a lot of questions that have come in before about imagery and about branding and about, how to use brand imagery. So I decided to reach out and contact one of the great resources that we like to use with our clients, Carrington Crothers. She's from Prospect Street Studio. And Carrington has a lot of experience with brand imagery. She has a lot of experience in the use of imagery to represent your brand. And so I'll let her introduce herself, and I'm going to ask her some questions based on questions that we've been hearing both through this channel as well as in other channels that people ask us. So Carrington, please introduce yourself.
Awesome. Well, you did a great job of that already for me, and thanks for having me. So my name is Carrington Crothers, and I am the owner of Prospect Street Studio, which is a brand photography agency that is based in Massachusetts. And I primarily work with product and service-based businesses to create conversion-based imagery for brand growth. So it's really taking a more strategic approach to your imagery to figure out how is it aligned with the different tools that you're using, whether it's email marketing, website, social media. How do we create those images to create those conversions, to make those conversations happen? And being really strategic about, hey, we don't need 500 photos to make that happen. Let's make the imagery do the work for us. So it's a little bit about me. I work with clients both locally in New England and across the country. I can do it all virtually. So I have a pretty well established breadth of service-based clients, product-based clients, and I'm an open book. So excited to answer some of your questions.
Cool. So Carrington, I want to start with branded imagery, because one of the big questions we get from clients a lot is, hey, we're busy. We, have a lot going on. I don't have time to do a shoot. I don't have time to think about this. Why can't we just use stock imagery? There's a lot of stock out there. It's very affordable. There's a wide breadth of it. AI is generating some of it now. Why can't I just use stock? And I know you definitely have some great answers for that. So what do I say to those clients who are saying that to me?
Yeah, so stock imagery is one of those things where everyone thinks, oh, this is the easy route. I can just go grab it. There's a lot of different avenues that you can take with it. There's good times to use it, and there's bad times to use it. One bad time to use it is any image when you see like it's been downloaded in the millions or many hundreds of thousands of times, please do not buy that photo. That is going to do you absolutely no good. If you're using stock, find imagery that has a really low purchase count, because Google can read stock imagery. If images get used often, Google can pick up on that, and it doesn't help you from a web perspective, doesn't help you for SEO. Google doesn't like it. So stock is something to be really careful with. But when it comes to making branded imagery, no one can copy that. That is your own specific photo. People will learn your brand when you hone in on your brand imagery. They can look at it and be like, oh, I know that's a Kelly photo. I know that's a Marianne photo. Because you'll get really honed in on a certain brand standard. And that's really where you start to get the value out of people. Don't have to think about it. They know that style belongs to that person.
Yeah. And today imagery is so important, right? So whether we're creating email for somebody or we're helping them with their social media campaigns, whatever it is, that imagery is so important, because it's not that it ever wasn't important, but I think more and more today we see so many images come through that you really need to be standout. You need to be unique in order for people to remember your brand. And I agree that, when you have stock photos, you are everybody else's brand, right? There's nothing unique about it for you. So that's really cool. All right. So I'm talking to a client and they've said, okay, I agree, stock imagery is not really like the right choice for us. Maybe they've worked with a photographer in the past. They had to deal with like the studio and the lights and the scheduling and this and that and the other thing, and that seems overwhelming to them. I know that's not every process. Sometimes that's what you need, but sometimes it's different. Can you explain a little bit about what a discovery process should work like? And what a client should expect when they start to work with you for the first time, whether they've done photo shoots in the past or not, what should they expect? What should they be looking for with a photographer to get a solid brand package out of that process they're going through?
Yeah, definitely. So one huge red flag I tell everyone, I'm like, whether you work with me or somebody else, is if somebody's just like, here's your photos, good luck, massive red flag. Have a discovery process. The photographer needs to understand your brand in and out. What are your brand guidelines? What is your messaging, your copywriting? What is your end goal? Are you trying to increase your conversions, reduce your returns, get more customers to pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm interested, I want to learn more? What are those goals? And how does the imagery actually impact that? And if the photographer is not having those conversations with you, why are you getting the photos? Because they're not going to benefit you in the long run. They're just going to be something for you to post and have a really short lifespan. And if you take a little extra time and figure out the strategy behind it, you can double, triple, quadruple X the lifespan of your photography and also the dollars that you spend to create the photography.
Cool. So discovery is really important for you. I mean, discovery is a big part of what we do as well. And we ask those questions sometimes in context of the email we're creating or the campaign that we're planning, but knowing that they should also be having that conversation with their photographer about the creative that you're making as well. That's a big difference in just hiring any freelancer you see off of Indeed or whatever. So
exactly. Cool. It's like, say you're making an email blast and the title is Let's Party, and I hand you this dark and moody photo. Okay, well, now your copy in your header doesn't match your photo. So they're speaking two different languages. But if I didn't actually have the conversation to figure out what is the purpose of the photo, it's not going to work, right? Or I can cater it to that Let's Party and create you this fun image that speaks the same language.
Right. Cool. All right. So I want to talk about e-commerce for a minute because we do deal with e-commerce clients who have to create a lot of imagery. Part of the challenge I get hit with a lot of times when a client comes in with their e-commerce brand is their pictures are like all over the place, right? Like their niece took this and then they took these in the store and then this product just came in off the truck. And so they're snapping it off their iPhone, right? Like how do you sort of set a brand standard in photography and as you look at doing that, like understanding that you're building a bank of photos, right? Like how do you address dealing with the consistency that you're going to need and establishing something that when I see a photo, even if there's nothing else around it, I'm going to know which brand that product came from.
Right. Yeah, so a lot of people will be like, oh, this is my brand standard guide. And they have this really big document and there's no photography section. And that's usually something that's missing. And I'm like, especially if you are selling on an e-commerce platform for a product-based business, you really should have that because if you have your lighting standards down, like you could take that lighting standard and hand it to any competent photographer and they could recreate that for you. If I went out of business tomorrow and you have my lighting, you can go hire somebody else and still follow those standards, right? But if you have your niece here, me here, and your iPhone there, people aren't going to know what to expect from you. And when they don't know what to expect, that ends up leading to further issues from getting returns to unhappy customers to there's a breadth of those different types of issues that you can have. But when we break it down and help educate the viewer on e-commerce, you reduce all of those problems because it's consistent. It makes sense. You're hitting all of those different types of education points. And if you educate more in the photos, they don't have to read as much in the descriptions, right? You can just make them want to add to cart, make that phone call, forget reading the paragraph because you've done all of your due diligence to educate the viewer in the photo first.
So that consistency, you mentioned lighting is part of the consistency you recommend that they create. What other types of consistencies do you want to see in e-commerce?
So if we're talking like, we can talk e-commerce on white, which
Mhm.
definitely your lighting, angles, your camera height is huge. Like if you have a
Mm,
bottle and you're shooting up high, looking at the lid, or if you're looking down at it, like a more of a hero shot,
mhm.
those have very different feels and messaging behind it. So making sure you understand your do's and your don'ts is really important. And that can come down to like even whether you like shadows or you don't like shadows. When I start working with a new brand, we do a lighting test and I create them 3 different versions of light that they can then look at and say, all right, I really like this one. I'm not feeling this, but the third one looks really good. So then they can see what these options are because you can make so many different types of photos and making little tweaks changes it. So that's where the consistency can come in. And having a say in what you get is huge. So like I always want my clients to be part of that process. I want them to see, here's all the options. What do you like? What do you not like? And why is also really important. So then I learn more about the brand going forward. And when we start to create that more lifestyle based imagery, we can follow those same patterns. So
Right.
it makes sense and it's all aligned.
Yeah, I like where you're going with process because I've worked with a lot of photographers. I really like your process. Can you talk a little bit about how you work with clients, through the photo shoot, through the selection process, so that people understand things that they should be looking for their photographer to provide, or things that they could ask for them to provide so that they get a better experience? Because when we've worked together, I know that even my clients who I would say are sort of less technically inclined and don't know a lot about art or brand photography or anything like that, they've still come out on the other side saying, I really get what Carrington, like you do part of my job for me because you help them understand what we're trying to get to as a goal, right? So if you can talk a little bit about your process and how you educate that client so people can understand, hey, this is what I should be doing with my photographer. These are the conversations I should be having, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So one thing is a big ask for me for every client is if you like it, tell me. If you hate it, tell me. Because if I don't know what's happening, I can't pivot and adjust. So that's why all of my shoots, I do them live. Whether you can stand next to me or we're doing it virtually over Zoom, I want you to be part of that process. I want you to see every photo I take, every adjustment I make, because if halfway through the shoot, that thought you had in your head that's this great idea and you're like, this isn't translating, we can pause. We can have a conversation about it to figure out, all right, what are we missing and how do we get it to that vision in your head? So, especially like Marianne, you know this, when you have somebody who doesn't really know what they want or they've had a bad experience with a photographer in the past, that part is really crucial because now you get to see it. You get that point to say, I love it, or
Mm-hmm.
wait, that's a weird angle, right? So you end up just being happier at the end of the photo shoot, being able to say, this works or this
Mm-hmm.
doesn't, down to what I said about the lighting diagram. You
Yeah.
have a say. I
Mm-hmm.
had a client that I did a lighting diagram for, and he literally was like, I like this part of the first one and this part of the third. So I made him a fourth option, combining those two. And that gave him exactly what he needed. But
Right.
without that conversation, you don't know what you're going to get. And that will most likely just lead to disappointment at the end of the photo shoot.
Yeah, I think you nailed it pretty well. It's that I think a lot of photographers take this like pie in the sky approach, or this like I am the creative and I will like bless you with the creative that I make. And that's not commercial photography. Like you want to do that for your display at the Met, you go for it, right?
Right.
But commercial photography is about a goal of like trying to sell product or service or build a brand or whatever is, the end commercial goal for this shoot. And being able to talk to the person who is creating that, like through our process as well, like we don't just write stuff and launch it, right? We write it, we let clients read it, we get their feedback. And over time, we sort of work through like, how do you want your message presented? What should your voice sound like? It doesn't happen in one shot, and
Right.
nor should your photography. And if your photographer is not willing to let you be part of that creative process, maybe rethink your relationship with the photographer and how you want to work with them, because that is the satisfaction level. Okay, cool. So I want to talk a little bit, I want to touch quickly on, my niece took this photo and I took that with my iPhone, and then that's professional photo. But like the reality is that in the churn of creation, of content creation, sometimes clients or their agencies are going to have to create their own photos. What is, in your professional opinion, a time to use that? Like, it's okay to use your iPhone for this, but when you're doing this, this is the stuff you want to send to a photographer. How would you sort of draw that line in the sand for someone?
Yeah, mine is basically thinking about the lifetime of the photo. So your website, those images are going to have a longer lifespan. Your people don't update their website every single day. Also, probably not the best idea to do that regardless. So those photos you put on your website, they're going to sit there a lot longer. So those really should be honed in on, aligned with the copy that's next to it, helping with the hierarchy and the flow of your website. So for that, definitely choose to take that the professional route. Those images can translate to your social media, to your email, depending on obviously your layout and your use cases. But social media has a shorter lifespan for the imagery. So that's usually where you could say, hey, I can pull out my iPhone and we can create some content that works for this. My thing with my clients is, if they want to take that route, I help walk them through, like, these are my standards. And if you can follow some of them, here's the basics. So then they do still align a little bit. Not all photographers will take that time to break it down with you, but it goes a lot further in the long run if you can. But anything for like social media, go for it. If you want to do some DIY, if you want to kind of play with different ideas, but definitely look at also what is being used on your website. If you're really bright and colorful and you're posting dark and moody cell phone photos on your Instagram, they're not going to align. Someone's going to go to your Instagram and go to your website and be like, is this the same brand? Like, I don't really know. So you still want some consistency, whether you're working with a professional, if you're doing it yourself. So one thing I always say is to slow down, think like a painter when you're doing your own DIY stuff. Why are old paintings still famous to this day? Why do they stand the test of time and are so impactful? Well, it takes more than 1 second to create that painting. You have to think things through. You have to have a process. You have to know when to put the paint on, what your composition is. So slow down, think like a painter, and then start figuring out kind of how you want to DIY it.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. Is there anything else that you can think of that people should know before they go out and hire a photographer, before they go have their shoot, or even if they've been working with someone and they're trying to figure out, like, how do I deal with professional imagery and my brand? Like, anything else that you can think of that people might want to know or think about?
Just have conversations with people. Figure out, one, whose work do you vibe with? Also, do you vibe with their personality and their processes? Ask them a lot of questions to make sure that they can understand your brand and your need. And if they don't align with saying, hey, you want to reduce your return rate, and they have no suggestions on how to do that, maybe we have a different conversation. But be open and honest. And if you can find the photographer who vibes with what your needs and your goals are, give it a go.
Thank you. That is great advice. I really love the way that you treat the photography, the brand photography process with sort of the same criteria that we look at content creation and campaign creation. And that,
Yep.
it's not, yes, it has to be beautiful. And yes, it has to be professional. And maybe you want a real slick look to things, but it also has to have goals at the end. And if you can't put a KPI on something and say this photo or this shoot or this campaign met those goals that we were setting, then it's really time to rethink your budgets and how you're spending that money or who you're using to do these projects, because commercial photography is for commerce. It can be art at the same time. And I will tell you, you have taken some pictures of bagels that I know some of our clients consider to be true art they want to hang on their walls, but it also has this goal, this commercial goal, this measurable goal of helping elevate the brand message or helping to sell something else. And, if if your brand imagery isn't doing that, hence like back to stock photos, if your brand imagery isn't doing that, then it's not really working for you and you need to consider how you're using it. So
Right. Exactly.
cool. Thank you so much, Carrington. I really appreciate your time and all of your feedback. And if anybody has any questions, we'll include Carrington's contact information and the links with this workshop. So you can please feel free to reach out to her, ask her questions. She is brilliant and she really thinks things through, as you can tell. So I, would love for you guys to be able to go direct to her and just ask her your questions, because I truly, like, she's the expert that I go to when I have a question on something about brand photography, because I know that she will not just give me an answer, but a really thoughtful, professional answer that will help us get to our goals.
Yep.
All right.
If anyone has questions, more than happy to talk with you. No obligation for anything. Feel free to pick my brain. I'm an open book.
Cool. Thank you, Carrington.
Of course.
All right, Lauren, we got a couple minutes left. Can we hit one of our questions from this week that was sent in?
Yes. Ruani, can I pull you up on screen here and get your question? I know she has been waiting quite a long time for this question to be answered, I think since April.
Oh, so long, I forgot I even signed up.
I know. Thank you so much for joining and being willing to hop on the screen with us. So the question is that she asked is, what is the best way to keep your email list clean? She has a lot of new subscribers over the last year by adding a pop-up with an offer, but metrics are lower and she feels like we don't need to be paying for these folks, but she's not sure if they're safe to delete, that type of thing.
Sure.
So does that jog your memory, Juan? Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it.
Perfect. Well, thank you for joining us today. So let me first clarify that the list that you have is a list of people who have signed up from a pop-up. They are definitely these are people who expressly visited your website.
Yep.
So when we're dealing with pop-up modals or any kind of website contact form, there is sort of a certain percentage of robots or spam traps addresses that can be populated there. So that may be some of the issue you're dealing is you're just not getting real email addresses. Okay. But I'm going to start with the assumption that these are real email addresses, right? So the first thing I'm going to say is if you can segment out the people who have been opening your emails from the people who haven't been opening your emails. And the people who haven't been opening your emails, have you ever tried a re-engagement campaign with them?
I did. I tried one win back campaign for the first time a couple months ago, and I did I forget the exact targeting, but it was based on opens and clicks, and it did have an offer for 10% off a future purchase, and I got crazy low open rates on it, 4%, which I've never seen before. So something about that did not work. I don't know if it was the audience or the offer or the subject line, but I have tried it once before. So I want to try that again, but
you're taking unengaged people, right? So step back for a second and go, these are people that haven't opened anything in 6, 8, 10 months, whatever, right? The fact that you got any of them to open anything is good. So don't beat yourself up on the open rate. Okay. You're taking what is essentially a dead list and reinvigorating it. So that's good. Okay. So great. Now you can take those people, put them in your engaged list because you got some kind of response. But I wouldn't just do one campaign. I would actually hit people up and I would try different offers. Typically, when we're going to do re-engagement campaign, it's going to be a series of 3 or 4 emails. If you have text messaging as well, you could broaden that to include text messages. It can be an offer for 10% off. It can also be something as simple as design ideas or tips, the things that you should know, right? Because sometimes percent off and shopping offers work for people who are at the stage where they are ready to buy. But if they are more top of funnel, if they haven't moved down the cycle yet, right, it's just too early for that. And so try things that are higher up on the funnel and see if you can get those offers to kick in. I would try 3 or 4 times. That's the first thing I would do. If you've gone through that, right, maybe you get another 4 or 5% to move over. Fantastic. And also make sure that you set up that re-engagement as an ongoing automation. I don't know what software you use, but are you allowed to say?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I use Iterable.
Okay. So set up an iterable and automation that people, when they hit a certain month of time or days or whatever it is where they have neither opened nor clicked. So you're going to create an automatic list of people who meet a certain criteria that you define as unengaged, right? Immediately when somebody meets that, you're going to send them into the automation to re-engage them. And then when they spit out on the other end, if they have engaged, then they remove the tag or whatever you're using to identify them, put them back in the other list. And that now you have this other group. Okay. So these other groups, This is where I would say, let's look at a list scrub service. Okay. So look at a zero bounce or a never bounce or something like that. Take your list, load it through, and see if they're just dead names. So some ESPs are better than others at sort of filtering out garbage names. Like, MailChimp uses an omnivore warning. If they find a lot of garbage on your list, they're going to flag it, not let you send. But not every provider does that. So I would consider looking at one of those. And you can actually, if your list is really large, and this is going to be a frequent process for you, you can actually subscribe to these services and automatically feed your list at like whatever point into there, and they'll scrub it for you. Okay. And it's just an automatic scrub to pull them so you're not paying for them. So go through the scrub, see who's really, really garbage. When they're really, really garbage, you get rid of them. If you're looking at names that are more than 12 to 18 months old and you've tried re-engagement a couple times and nothing's worked, scrub them. Just say goodbye. They're not going to convert ever, and it's okay. When you're dealing with consumer lists, especially, you've got Gmail, Yahoo, things like that. This is where you're definitely going to have people just don't renew their address, right? They're using it for a particular project, they're moving on, and they're not going back to that address. So it's okay to let them go. Don't feel bad about that. You're saving money, archive them, and just keep going on with the others. But I would create this as a standard process so that you go through re-engagement, push them into re-engagement, fall off, put them through a scrub cycle. If you scrub and it says, yes, they're still a good email address, but you haven't been able to get them to re-engage, you can try to put them through re-engagement again. I would keep sending to them, but maybe segment them off, because one of the things that we see is that if you're sending to people that don't open things and you want to say do an A/B split test for something, you've got people who are never going to open anything. So they're just kind of ruining your test. Right. So segment them off. You know that they're unengaged. Don't email them as often as you email the more engaged people, but hit them up every once in a while. Find particular times of the year when they are more likely to respond based on the seasonal demands of the business. And, try multiple funnel offers to see if you can convert them. Eventually, if they hit an 18-month mark and you've had no engagement for 18 months, good or not, I'd archive them because they're not going to turn around.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much.
You're
Great.
Welcome. Hope that helps. Let me know how it goes.
I will.
All right, cool. All right, Lauren, I think we're out of time.
Are out of time. But
all right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. For those of you that couldn't come here live, hope you enjoy the recording. If you have any other questions, please go ahead and send them in. I know we had a couple of others that were sent in. We will address those in the next event. And Lauren, when is our next workshop?
it is in July. Oh man, you put me on the spot.
Sorry.
Third Thursday of the month. And that in July, that's the 16th.
If you say so.
16th is the third Thursday of July.
All right, cool.
I'll confirm that when I send the email to everybody.
All right, that sounds great. All right. Thank you everybody for joining us. As I said, we're thrilled to have you answer your questions. Feel free to keep sending them in and reach out to us if there's anything else we can do for you.